Good morning and welcome to At 11. Today we are going to be looking at Pentecost. So we're going to look at the story now, which is taken from Acts chapter 2. So here we go. Enjoy.
God sends help. Jesus' friends and helpers huddled together in a stuffy upstairs room. Even though it was sunny outside, the shutters were closed, the door was locked. "Wait in Jerusalem," Jesus had told them. "I'm going to send you a special present. God's power is going to come into you. God's Holy Spirit is coming." So here they were, waiting. Actually, mostly what they were doing was just being scared and hiding. You can't blame them. Their best friend had left. The important people and leaders were after them, and Jesus had given them a job they didn't know how to do. As they waited, they were praying and remembering how from the beginning God had been working out his secret plan. Suddenly, a strong wind filled the little room, whistling through the walls, rustling the straw on the floor. And there, on everyone's head, shining in the gloom, were flickering flames, fire that didn't hurt or burn. And something more. Inside their hearts, they felt a strange heat, almost as if all the coldness and hardness were melting away. As if their broken hearts were mending, and God was giving them brand new hearts, hearts that could work properly. How it happened they didn't know, but they knew God's power had struck their hearts ablaze, and Jesus himself was coming to live inside them. They had seen Jesus go away, but now he was closer than he had ever been, inside their hearts. And this time nothing could ever separate them. Jesus would always be nothing out there, with them, loving them, whispering the promise that would get rid of the poison and terrible lie and sickness in their hearts. God's wonderful promise to them: "You are my child and I love you. Make your home in me as I make my home in you," Jesus had said. Could it be? Heaven was coming into their hearts. They threw open the shutters. Sunlight flooded their room as love had flooded their heart. And the little room was filled with happy noises, dancing feet, singing, laughing. They unlocked the door and surged out into the streets, as if they had never been afraid. Peter spoke in a loud voice so everyone could hear. "Jesus died for you," he said, "because he loves you. But God made him alive again. He has rescued you." People stopped and listened. The words sank down deep into their hearts and worked like a medicine that makes you well, like the antidote to a deadly poison, like a kiss that wakes you from a deep sleep. "Stop running away from God," Peter said. "Run to him instead, so he can love you and make you free." And Peter told them the wonderful stories of God's love. God's never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking and forever love. How Jesus has come, all that had happened. There were lots of people from far away countries in Jerusalem. They couldn't speak the same language, but as they listened to Peter, everyone could understand what he was saying in their own languages. Many people believed and became Jesus' new friends and helpers, and the wonderful news of Jesus spread like sparks from a fire to villages, towns, cities. Every day more and more people believed, and so it was that the family of God's children, his special people, grew. One man was watching. "I'll stop this," Saul said. But this was God's plan, and nothing in all the world would ever be able to stop it.
So Jewish men gathered in Jerusalem after their harvest with offerings from all over the surrounding countries. This is why there were so many people there, that when the disciples did speak in tongues in the different languages, that it was recognised and seen as a strange thing that why these men were speaking in each person's native tongue. They gathered and they used the time to offer and pray for the next harvest. So they prayed for the harvest would be plentiful. It was a time of transition between the two harvests. They weren't expecting the transition that was about to happen. The disciples had been told by Jesus before his ascension to go, wait and pray. So they gathered in the upper room of the temple, and they waited there for 10 days. Pentecost happens 50 days after Passover. By coincidence? Maybe not. Moses led the Jews from slavery under the Romans. 50 days later, the Mount Sinai received his 10 Commandments. Trouble is, in that case, people who continue to worship the golden calf that they had come to idolise, they died, 3,000 of them all in all. This was a time of transition for the Jews from slavery into freedom, into the promised land. When disciples received the Spirit and they spoke in tongues, people heard. 3,000 at that moment turned to Jesus. This shows a difference between the laws that are given to Moses and the New Testament that's been given by Jesus, which is offering each and every one of us new life through Jesus Christ. And the similarities go on. Exodus 19, 16 to 19. On the Mount Sinai, God's presence was accompanied by fire, smoke, sound of thunder. When the disciples sat in the room and the Spirit came, there was sounds of wild wind all around them, tongues of fire splitting and sitting above each one of the disciples, and the gift of different languages, which was the tongues. So 2,000 years after Moses, Jesus dies on the cross. 50 days later, after he's risen and gone to be with God, we have a great gift given to us as promised by Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Not just given to the disciples who were there in that room, but it's given to each and every one of us. So they were up in that room for 10 days, waiting, praying, expecting. A great time of unknown for the disciples. Their world has been rocked. It's been shaken up again. The person they had been following, instructed them, had gone from them. I'm sure it was a time of massive uncertainty, worries, maybe panic. But they were still faithful when they'd done what they were asked by Jesus, and they waited and prayed. The Holy Spirit fell on each of them. This was not a quiet affair. This drew crowds from the festival all around. People from all over attending heard their native tongue being spoken. The disciples didn't know what they were saying. This was the Spirit. The Spirit was speaking through them to the people. This is another time of transition. As God changed things for the Jews with Moses, through Jesus, he's now given a new covenant, a New Testament for us all. A promise has been fulfilled. I will pour out my Spirit on all people. The Spirit coming is not just for the disciples, it's for each and every one of us to receive. The Holy Spirit gives you power in and to serve Christ. You shall receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be witness to me. That's from Acts 1:8. The Spirit gives you fire in your heart to go out and do God's work. As with any fire, it requires maintenance. Without fuel, it will go out. Too little fuel is going to dwindle. And of course you need the right fuel for it to keep it roaring fire, and you need plenty of fuel. During this time of lockdown, we need to remember we are the church, each and every one of us. And this is where we need to get our fuel from to keep our spirit burning. So remember, if there are any questions or any doubts, please ask someone. Do pick up the phone, send an email, talk. Because it takes effort to keep that fire going, and in these sort of uncertain times, it can make it harder than ever. Just as the disciples were finding it hard when they were sat in that room to keep their spirits high, to wondering what's going to happen next, where do we go from here? We need to keep our fire burning, keep it fed with the right fuel. That's through the learning that we can receive at this moment online and through talking to each other. So remember, we are all in this together, and we are all here together. Okay, I'm going to go into a little time of prayer now. Holy Spirit of life, inflame us with passion for the good news you bring. Let our voices ring with hope and promises of Christ. Holy Spirit of love, immerse us in compassion and kindness. May your words bring comfort to those in need of consolidation and assurance. Holy Spirit of grace, enlighten our minds and hearts. Fill our speech with expression of peace and understanding. Holy Spirit, bless us with the patience that the disciples had, and burn within each one of us, giving us the passion to serve you and sow the seeds on to others. Amen.